Hey, folks. Today's list revisits 27 Hollywood moments that spiraled in ways nobody could have predicted.
Hollywood, where dreams are made, logic goes missing, and million-dollar decisions are powered by pure caffeine and ego. Welcome to the industry that once spent $40 million just to prove it had no idea what the public actually wants. 1. The time Hollywood spent millions to erase a mustache. Let's start with one of the most expensive facial hair removals in human history. In 2017, Henry Cavill was playing Superman for Justice League, but he was also filming Mission: Impossible at the same time. The problem? One movie needed him clean-shaven, the other required a glorious mustache that could probably bench press a small car. Paramount, the studio behind Mission: Impossible, refused to let him shave it. Warner Brothers panicked and decided the only solution was to digitally remove the mustache from every Superman scene using CGI. The result? A $25 million upper lip disaster that made Superman look like a wax figure trying to speak through a rubber mask. Fans couldn't focus on the plot because his face looked like it had been animated by interns with a hangover. To this day, CGI mustache removal is Hollywood shorthand for "we learned absolutely nothing." 2. When a studio built a real boat, then sank it. In 1980, director Michael Cimino convinced United Artists to fund Heaven's Gate, a western so authentic he rebuilt an entire 19th century town from scratch, complete with a functioning train, imported oxen, and a river redirected by hand. The studio thought it would be the next Gone with the Wind. Instead, it became Gone with the Budget. Cimino's obsession with perfection turned a $12 million film into a $44 million disaster. He insisted on reshooting sunsets because the clouds felt emotionally dishonest. By the time the movie finally premiered, the studio was bankrupt, and the audience was asleep. Critics called it a 3-hour funeral for American cinema. The film's financial wreckage was so catastrophic, it single-handedly destroyed United Artists, the company behind Rocky and James Bond. So yes, one man's art project literally sank an entire movie studio. 3. The cat movie that became a cult of confusion. Few things unite humanity like collective disbelief, and Cats, 2019, delivered it in full, glittery panic. The film was supposed to be a dazzling adaptation of the beloved Broadway musical. Instead, it became a digital fever dream. Producers spent months turning A-list actors into cat-human hybrids that lived deep in the uncanny valley. Judi Dench looked like a haunted rug. Rebel Wilson unzipped her cat skin to reveal another cat skin. And somewhere, Idris Elba decided to take his shirt off, despite being covered in fur. The studio even released an emergency patched version of the film days after its premiere to fix the horrifying CGI errors, as if updating a video game no one wanted to play. Critics called it emotionally scarring, and audiences agreed. The movie bombed so hard that theaters started advertising it as the cinematic equivalent of a gas leak. Somewhere, Andrew Lloyd Webber's cat was crying and possibly suing for defamation. 4. When a movie spent $175 million, then deleted the whole thing. Imagine spending the GDP of a small country on a film, then locking it in a vault forever. That's exactly what happened with Batgirl, 2022. Warner Brothers spent $90 million filming a full DC superhero movie, shot on location, edited, scored, and ready to go. The cast was ecstatic. The studio was less so. After test screenings went poorly, the new executives decided it was cheaper to never release it than risk bad press. So they killed it for a tax write-off. The entire movie became a deductible. Actors found out through Twitter that their work now lived in a financial spreadsheet, right next to miscellaneous losses and office snacks. Fans begged the studio to leak it, but Warner Brothers treated the footage like it contained nuclear secrets. So somewhere, there's a fully finished superhero film that no one will ever see. Because in Hollywood, failure isn't a tragedy, it's a tax strategy. 5. The time John Travolta introduced Adele Dazeem to the world. The 2014 Oscars gave us one of the most unintentionally iconic moments in live television. John Travolta, tasked with introducing Idina Menzel before her performance of Let It Go, walked confidently to the microphone, looked at the teleprompter, and then invented a completely new person. Please welcome the wickedly talented Adele Dazeem. The world collectively froze. Idina smiled like a hostage trying to stay polite. Twitter melted down within seconds. Travolta later blamed his frozen brain on last-minute script changes and stage nerves, but the damage was done. Adele Dazeem became a cultural legend. Even the New York Times published a name generator so you could Travoltify yourself. The best part? The following year, Idina Menzel got her revenge by introducing him as Glom Gazingo, proof that in Hollywood, revenge isn't served cold, it's served live on national TV. 6. When a studio tried to hide Will Smith's slap with silence. It was supposed to be the Oscars' big comeback after years of declining ratings. Instead, it turned into an episode of Jerry Springer in tuxedos. During the 2022 ceremony, Chris Rock made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's shaved head. Will Smith, in a move no PR agent could ever endorse, calmly walked on stage and slapped him across the face. Live, unedited, worldwide. Then he shouted, "Keep my wife's name out your mouth!" The network panicked, cutting the audio like it could somehow erase what everyone just saw. The audience thought it was a sketch, until it wasn't. Within minutes, memes spread faster than the broadcast itself. The slap overshadowed every award, every speech, every winner. The Academy condemned violence, then gave Will Smith an Oscar 15 minutes later. If irony had a highlight reel, that night would play on loop. 7. The shark movie that forgot to add sharks. In 2012, Battleship hit theaters with the full confidence of a film that thought Rihanna could sink the Navy. Literally. Loosely based on the board game nobody ever finished playing, it featured alien robots attacking warships in a plot so dumb it could be weaponized. The studio spent $220 million expecting a blockbuster. What they got was a masterclass in creative confusion, an action movie without a single memorable line, emotion, or coherent reason for existing. One critic called it Transformers meets the world's longest Navy commercial. Even the director admitted later he wasn't sure what the aliens were supposed to represent. Besides, expensive. The movie tanked so hard it nearly torpedoed Hasbro's dreams of turning every board game into a film franchise. Somewhere in a studio archive sits a Monopoly script whispering, "Maybe we shouldn't." 8. When the Emoji Movie tried to be deep in 2017, Hollywood officially ran out of ideas and decided to make a movie about emojis. Yes, the tiny yellow faces on your phone. The Emoji Movie followed a meh emoji having an existential crisis, because nothing says high art like an anthropomorphic expression trying to find meaning inside a smartphone. The cast included Sir Patrick Stewart as Poop, which is either the pinnacle of irony or the low point of his career. The film was marketed as a bold metaphor for communication in the digital age. In reality, it was a 2-hour commercial for apps nobody wanted. Critics called it the cinematic equivalent of malware. Audiences agreed, making it one of the worst reviewed films in Rotten Tomatoes history. But hey, at least it gave us one unforgettable lesson. If your movie idea fits in a text message, maybe just keep it there. 9. When Nicolas Cage bought a dinosaur skull and had to give it back. Nicolas Cage has always been Hollywood's favorite chaos gremlin. So when he outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for a dinosaur skull at an auction, nobody blinked. He paid $276,000 for a Tyrannosaurus bataar fossil, proudly displaying it in his home like a prehistoric trophy of financial confusion. Years later, the US government came knocking. Turns out, the skull had been stolen from Mongolia and smuggled out illegally. Cage, to his credit, immediately agreed to return it. But the embarrassment lingered. Imagine explaining to your accountant why you had to unbuy a dinosaur. It's peak Hollywood logic. Spend 6 figures on a bone, lose it to international law, and still somehow look cooler than everyone else. Cage later called it an honest mistake, which is probably the same thing the dinosaur said right before extinction. 10. The time the Mummy reboot killed an entire franchise before it started. In 2017, Universal Studios tried to launch its Dark Universe, a cinematic monster franchise meant to rival Marvel. The plan was to reboot The Mummy with Tom Cruise and then spin off into new films about Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Invisible Man. What they got instead was a 2-hour Tom Cruise commercial wrapped in ancient Egyptian confusion. The movie's trailer accidentally leaked online with missing sound effects, just grunts and flapping. turning it into an instant meme. The film itself bombed so hard that Universal quietly buried the entire shared universe plan within a week. Sets were dismantled, contracts shredded. Even the logo became a collector's item. The studio had to release a statement pretending the dark universe never existed, which, in a way, made it the most accurate name they could have chosen. When Jared Leto sent rats to his co-stars. Method acting is about becoming your character. Jared Leto took that advice, tied it to a rocket, and sent it into space. While filming Suicide Squad 2016, Leto decided to stay in character as the Joker, which in his mind meant mailing dead animals and used adult toys to his co-stars. He reportedly sent Margot Robbie a live rat and gifted the entire cast a dead pig. The crew called it immersive. The rest of us called it a cry for help. When the movie premiered, Leto's performance amounted to about 10 minutes of screen time. All that chaos, all those rats, for a role that could have been played by a confused extra in clown makeup. Later, he claimed most of the stories were exaggerated. Maybe so, but if your co-stars are filing emotional support requests, maybe tone down the method next time, Dr. Joker. 12. When Cats won an Oscar campaign, for pain you'd think after the Cats debacle, Hollywood would quietly move on. Instead, Universal tried to campaign it for Oscar consideration. They sent out for your consideration screeners, complete with behind-the-scenes footage. Because apparently, watching Judi Dench break the fourth wall in Fur wasn't haunting enough. The campaign backfired spectacularly. Even Academy voters joked they should win for Best Visual Trauma. Comedians started hosting unofficial Cats Awards online, honoring categories like Most Unnecessary Tail Movement and Worst Use of Digital Fur Technology. Universal eventually pulled the plug, but the damage was done. It became the first film to make people nostalgic for Howard the Duck. The irony? Taylor Swift's original song Beautiful Ghosts was actually decent, but it had to live inside a movie that looked like your nightmares downloaded Photoshop. 13. The time Sean Connery turned down The Matrix, and everything after it. Sean Connery was one of Hollywood's greatest icons, but even legends have blind spots. When offered the role of Morpheus in The Matrix, 1999, he declined, saying he didn't understand the script. He also turned down Lord of the Rings for the same reason: too confusing. After watching both become global sensations, he finally said yes to another complicated fantasy film, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It was, unfortunately, extraordinarily bad. The experience was so miserable that Connery retired from acting altogether. That's right, the man who played James Bond was defeated not by villains, but by confusing screenplays. Somewhere in a parallel universe, Morpheus has a Scottish accent, and Neo is still trying to decode what bullet time means. 14. When Disney made a movie about a haunted theme park ride in 2003, Disney had a brilliant idea. Hey, Pirates of the Caribbean worked. Let's turn every ride into a movie. Their first victim? The Haunted Mansion. It starred Eddie Murphy as a real estate agent trapped in a ghost-filled house, a concept that sounded spooky but played like a Halloween episode of House Hunters. Critics called it a 90-minute commercial for fog machines. The film's CGI ghosts looked like rejected Casper extras, and the humor was flatter than the park's parking lot. It made money, sure, but it also killed Disney's ride-to-film momentum for a decade. Ironically, the real Haunted Mansion at Disneyland ended up being scarier, mostly because people remembered the movie. 15. When Hollywood tried to make a movie about the emoji war and meant it by 2017, the world didn't need another Toy Story. It needed the Emoji Movie, or so Sony thought. The film's pitch? Inside every phone is a world of emojis struggling to find themselves. It was marketed as a profound allegory for technology and identity. It was actually a 90-minute advertisement for Dropbox. Patrick Stewart voiced Poop. Yes, that poop. The film's premiere literally took place inside a giant inflatable emoji head in Los Angeles, a fitting metaphor for how hollow it was. Critics didn't just pan it, they launched an exorcism. One reviewer wrote, "It's the first movie that made me wish my phone would die." But don't worry, it made $200 million worldwide, proving once again that stupidity, like Wi-Fi, has global coverage. 16. When Kevin Costner built a 3-hour Western and forgot the plot after Dances with Wolves made Kevin Costner a Hollywood god, he decided he could do no wrong. Then came Waterworld, 1995, the most expensive movie ever made at the time. The concept was Mad Max on boats, which sounds cool, until you realize 90% of the movie was filmed on open water, where everything that could sink did. The crew got seasick, the floating sets collapsed, and a hurricane literally destroyed production mid-shoot. Costner personally invested millions of his own money to save the art. What he saved instead was a soggy, overlong epic about people trading dirt as currency. Critics called it Titanic without romance, or a point. Years later, the film became a cult classic for all the wrong reasons. In Hollywood, visionary and financial disaster are often synonyms, and Waterworld proved you can drown in both. 17. When Marlon Brando showed up to set in a bucket hat and ruined cinema. By the time Apocalypse Now started filming, Marlon Brando had achieved full artistic chaos. Director Francis Ford Coppola imagined him as a muscular, terrifying Colonel Kurtz. What arrived on set was a 300-pound Brando wearing a bucket hat and refusing to read the script. Coppola panicked. Brando refused to be filmed from the waist down. For artistic mystery, he said, forcing the director to shoot him mostly in shadows like a human eclipse. The result? A legendary performance that was somehow equal parts genius and laziness. Brando was paid $3.5 million for 3 weeks of mumbling in the dark, roughly $100,000 per cryptic whisper. The film still became a masterpiece, but mostly because the rest of the cast survived malaria, madness, and Marlon's method acting. 18. When a movie trailer accidentally spoiled its own twist. In 1991, Columbia Pictures released the psychological thriller Sleeping with the Enemy, starring Julia Roberts as a woman escaping her abusive husband. It was meant to be a suspenseful, slow-burn drama until the studio released the trailer. In just 2.5 minutes, it revealed every single plot twist, including that Julia Roberts faked her own death and started a new life. Basically, the trailer was the movie's SparkNotes version. Audiences entered theaters already knowing the ending. The film still did well because, well, Julia Roberts. But it became a case study in marketing stupidity. Hollywood later used it in training sessions labeled, "Don't do this." It's the cinematic equivalent of baking a cake, showing everyone the recipe, and then acting surprised when no one wants a second slice. 19. When The Love Guru became a career extinction event. In 2008, Mike Myers tried to recapture his Austin Powers magic with The Love Guru, a comedy about a self-help spiritualist in Hollywood. What followed was a cosmic implosion of jokes, accents, and confusion. Myers wore orange robes, made Enlightenment puns, and spoke like a discount Dalai Lama. Critics called it a movie written by someone who hates laughter. It tanked so badly that Myers didn't star in another live-action movie for over a decade. Even Justin Timberlake, playing a hockey player named Jacques Lecoq Grande, couldn't save it. The film's moral was supposed to be about inner peace. Instead, it became an industry-wide cautionary tale. Hollywood realized that sometimes it's okay to let a franchise die quietly, instead of trying to reincarnate it as spiritual slapstick. 20. When a studio recast its star. Because of a cat, back in 1938, MGM was filming The Wizard of Oz when Buddy Ebsen, originally cast as the Tin Man, ended up in the hospital. The cause? His silver makeup contained aluminum dust that coated his lungs like metallic glue. He nearly died from sparkle inhalation. MGM's solution wasn't to change the makeup formula immediately. It was to replace him with Jack Haley and tell him to breathe shallower. Meanwhile, Toto, the dog, was paid more than most munchkins, and the Wicked Witch's green paint turned out to be toxic. The set was so dangerous it could have doubled as a chemical warfare experiment. The movie became a classic, but behind the curtain was pure industrial chaos. So next time someone calls The Wizard of Oz magical, remember, it was actually held together by lead paint, caffeine, and a studio with zero safety protocols. 21. When Michael Bay turned explosions into a lifestyle. There are directors who use explosions for drama, and then there's Michael Bay, who uses them as punctuation marks. During Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen, 2009, Bay reportedly detonated so many fireballs that local residents near the filming site thought an earthquake had hit. The script was written during the 2008 writers' strike, meaning whole sections were improvised, mostly with cars, robots, and zero plot. Megan Fox famously called Bay a nightmare to work with, comparing him to Hitler in an interview. Bay responded by firing her before the sequel, proving he had as much chill as his detonators. Critics said watching the film was like being inside a blender full of fireworks. It made $836 million worldwide, because in Hollywood, who needs a story when you can just blow it up and call it art? 22. When Jaws, The Revenge. Forgot how sharks work. By 1987, Hollywood had milked Jaws for all it was worth. But that didn't stop Universal from making a fourth sequel so bad it made the original shark wish for retirement. Jaws, The Revenge starred Lorraine Gary as a widow hunted by a shark seeking vengeance for the death of her husband. Yes, the shark literally held a grudge. Even worse, the script claimed the creature followed her from New England to the Bahamas, apparently by GPS or pure spite. The shark roared underwater, exploded for no reason, and looked like it was made from wet cardboard. Michael Caine, who starred in it, famously said, "I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen the house it bought me. And it's lovely." The movie sank faster than its animatronic star, proving once again that sequels, like sharks, are best left alone when they've already eaten everything. 23. When Howard the Duck became Hollywood's first $40 million quack. In 1986, George Lucas decided that after Star Wars, the next big cinematic hero should be a talking duck in a leather jacket. The result was Howard the Duck, a movie so bizarre it made audiences question reality. It wasn't funny enough for kids, not edgy enough for adults, and deeply uncomfortable for everyone in between, especially during the infamous duck-human romance scene that still haunts film students. The animatronic duck looked like a fever dream from Jim Henson's Dark Side. Critics called it a poultrygeist, and Lucas's career took such a hit he had to sell off parts of his company to stay afloat. Ironically, those sales led to the creation of Pixar. So, in a way, Howard the Duck waddled so Buzz Lightyear could fly. 24. When Tom Hooper made actors sing live and regretted everything Les Miserables, 2012, was supposed to be a triumphant, gritty adaptation of the Broadway classic. Director Tom Hooper wanted authenticity, so instead of lip-syncing, he made the cast sing live on set. It sounded artistic until you realized they were belting out solos in freezing rain and mud while trying to remember lines. Hugh Jackman nearly lost his voice. Russell Crowe sang like a man who just found out mid-note that he couldn't sing. Hooper bragged about his method as revolutionary, until Cats happened. The result was a mix of brilliance and chaos. Anne Hathaway won an Oscar, but everyone else got pneumonia. It proved that realism in musicals is like adding gluten to bubblegum. Technically possible, but no one really asked for it. 25. When Battlefield Earth tried to redefine rock bottom. If you ever need proof that unlimited confidence can destroy a film, look no further than Battlefield Earth, 2000. John Travolta produced it as a passion project, based on the sci-fi novel by Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. It was meant to be epic. It was just in all the wrong ways. The movie featured Dutch angles so extreme they made viewers seasick, dialogue that sounded like a bad translation of Shakespeare, and alien costumes that looked borrowed from a Spirit Halloween clearance bin. Travolta played an alien warlord with dreadlocks and an accent that defied geography. The movie lost over $70 million and became a cinematic cautionary tale. Critics described it as a film that doesn't just bomb, it craters. The only good thing it produced was decades of film students using it as Exhibit A in What Not to Do. 26. When Disney's John Carter spent $300 million to teach nothing. Disney's 2012 John Carter was supposed to be a groundbreaking sci-fi epic, combining Star Wars, Avatar, and ancient Mars mythology. Instead, it became the studio's biggest flop ever. The marketing was a masterclass in confusion. No one knew who John Carter was, what the movie was about, or why he was shirtless on Mars. The title alone cost them millions. Disney dropped Of Mars because they thought it would scare away female audiences. The movie's visual effects were stunning, but its story had the emotional range of a PowerPoint. Despite costing nearly $300 million, it barely recouped half worldwide. Disney executives quietly buried it, and the director fled back to animation, proving that when Hollywood forgets storytelling, even Mars can't save you. 27. When a cat literally saved Alien's reputation. Not every dumb Hollywood moment comes from failure. Sometimes it's from luck. In Alien, 1979, studio execs demanded the film include something relatable. The director added Jonesy, the orange cat. During test screenings, audiences screamed, gasped, and fainted, but relaxed every time the cat appeared. The studio, desperate for something to market, accidentally made Jonesy the film's emotional anchor. Posters were redesigned to feature him, merchandise followed, and critics weirdly praised the feline's natural charisma. The irony? Jonesy was only written in to distract the alien between kills. Decades later, fans still debate whether he's the true hero of the movie. So yes, in the middle of chest bursts, terror, and space horror, a cat accidentally became the face of cinematic survival. Welcome to Hollywood, where even genius starts with, "Fine, throw in a cat." And there you have it, 27 moments that prove Hollywood's real special effect isn't CGI, it's hubris. For every masterpiece, there's a multi-million-dollar disaster powered by ego, glitter, and very bad judgment. So, tell me, which one deserves the golden trophy for dumbest moment in Hollywood history? Drop your pick below. And remember, if a movie ever sounds like a terrible idea somewhere in Los Angeles, someone's already greenlighting the sequel.